In this morning's Business Insight, as we reported earlier, there is now a city-county deal in place to support the private financing of a soccer-only stadium in Oakley. FC Cincinnati is one of 4 finalists on Major League Soccer's list of expansion team candidates. The stadium and financing plan are reportedly key for Cincinnati to get one of those MLS franchises. Owners and officials from each finalist bid will make formal presentations to the MLS on Wednesday in New York. 2 new franchises will be awarded before the end of the year. Business Courier reporter Steve Watkins covers sports, business, and reporter Chris Wetterick covers local government. Both Steve and Chris have been following this story, and they joined Business Watch producer Kelly Leon with some insight. Chris, Steve, and Kelly.
Thanks so much. Guys, thanks for being here. You must be exhausted from covering this story all week. So many moving parts. Let's start with, as Peg said, the things that you cover, your beats. Sports, business, government. Why is this an important story, and why is an MLS franchise potentially important to the city?
Well, for me, I cover FC Cincinnati and sports business in general, so the areas that I cover, it's a huge deal. For one thing, it would be the 3rd major league sports franchise in Cincinnati. There's a lot of money associated with that. TV exposure would be multitudes higher for FC Cincinnati and for the city in general than what we see now. It'd be very similar to when ESPN covered one of the U.S. Open Cup games against an MLS team this summer.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, they covered a couple of them, but that kind of exposure would happen way more frequently. There's a lot more sponsorship money involved. The stakes just get higher in general for FC Cincinnati. The attendance probably goes up. Ticket prices, some will stay roughly the same, but a lot of ticket prices will go up a little bit. Sponsorship costs, everything. It's just a much bigger deal. It's going from sort of the equivalent of a minor league type franchise to a major league franchise.
How about you, Chris?
Well, the city and county have the long history with stadiums, building stadiums, and so there's a lot of concern, right, about that and the raw, kind of raw deal that people feel that Paul Brown Stadium was for the taxpayers. So, in the city and county's case, they've offered up $52 million for the infrastructure around the stadium, not the stadium itself.
Right.
But that still caused a lot of concern from people because it's not something necessarily that taxpayers would always necessarily pay for.
So let's clear up a few questions that I think are confusing people. I don't know about you, but at my Thanksgiving table last week, there was talk about this. Like, so just a few weeks ago, the county appeared to be out. They said Paul Brown Stadium is what we should do. What happened to that?
Well, the county wanted Paul Brown Stadium because they already own it. The problem is MLS doesn't want Paul Brown Stadium. They want a soccer-specific stadium that's built for soccer, controlled by the team. None of those things are in play with Paul Brown Stadium. FC Cincinnati knew that all along. The county really wanted to push that option because it's cheaper for the county. But once they got into it, talked to MLS, that option got pushed off the table pretty quickly.
Okay.
And the county's going to build a 1,000-space garage. They estimate it'll cost $15 million. There's some questions about whether that's really what it will cost. Maybe $20 million is more kind of in line with what a standard garage costs per space with 1,000 spaces. So, but that's what the county commissioners approved, and so that's their side of the deal.
And speaking of that, all these infrastructure improvements are in Oakley, scheduled for Oakley. So is Oakley the site? Done deal? No question?
No. Not no question.
That's what I thought.
That is still up in the air, definitely.
Right. We've our reporting shows us that the West End site, potentially behind Taft Information Technology High School, that's a site that they still consider to be a good one. And if they could put all the parcels together and get that going, I think they would probably do that.
So would those infrastructure would that money for infrastructure move to that site, or does it stay in Oakley?
We don't know what the cost of infrastructure will be in the West End.
Okay.
So, the stuff in Oakley is mostly utility lines, it's building roads, it's extending roads. There's already roads around that site. There's already a 7-lane road in terms of Ezra Charles Drive that extends up from I-75. So if you had to guess, maybe the infrastructure would be less, but we don't really know.
And the county, their money expires actually January 1st if FC Cincinnati does not get a bid.
Okay.
So if they don't win this time, there's still 2 more franchises to be awarded down the road. They could get it then, but that county money is off the table. Todd Portune was very clear about that with me after the meeting.
So that's the county, but what about the city?
So the cities, the city has got a bunch of different little pots of money that it's pulling from. The main one that council members, I think, are concerned about is about $7.4 million from that the city has in surplus in a kind of a reserve account from the sale of Blue Ash Airport land. That money could move to the West End site or to any other city site if it does. The other money, the other buckets are TIF districts around Oakley that can only be used in Oakley. They cannot be used in the West
Gotcha.
End. The hotel tax money potentially also could be used in the West End, but
Okay,
it depends
so
on how much.
I thought we were going to simply clear up some questions here. I think I'm a little bit more confused. And we have to be mindful of time. I just want to ask, both of you are so close to this. You're covering this every day. You know, we hear a lot of things, this wasn't handled well, it feels rushed. Can you just, from your perspective, not your opinion, I understand, how was this handled? Could it have been handled better? Is this a good thing that we're moving forward?
Well, I can speak first to the FC Cincinnati side of it. I don't know as much about the governmental end, but Chris will be able to talk to that. For FC Cincinnati, one of the things that I think people don't definitely understand is that they are simply going through the process of meeting a deadline that MLS has. So what they're trying to do is make sure that they can show they've got control of a stadium site and that they can build it, which is different than saying they are going to start building it in 2 weeks or whatever time frame. So they've got control of the site, they've got financing lined up, and they have the government approvals that are needed. And that's what MLS needs to see.
They just need to know that's in place and that it exists.
And that does not, I think a lot of people think, okay, this is all finished, and it's not. This is just one step in the process to meet their deadline, which is coming up in about a week or 2.
Okay. How about you, Chris, from your perspective?
I mean, I've said I thought it was handled poorly.
You weren't going to give your opinion.
I wrote a
That's
column
fine.
about it saying basically that. So I think it was rushed. I think elections played a factor in it, and they tried to wedge it between the election day and this December deadline. It resulted in a process where people in Oakley didn't really have a lot of time to give their opinion, and that's, you know, the city does that a lot when there's a lot of money at stake, and I think it reflects poorly on them.
Well, I guess we'll find out in mid-December whether
That's right.
all of this pays off. And the one thing I know for sure is you guys will keep covering it day in and day out. So
We will.
thanks so much for being here.
Glad to do it.